spirituality, and the first one is about my mom. I should explain that I was planning on visiting her, and it was the middle of the month, but then she died in the beginning of the month, and so I had 18 days there alone with my father trying to deal with things, and so what I did was right, a lot. And this is one of them that's called Knelt and Cried. I was in the minivan, Dad's new car, driven only 930 miles. Dad sitting, sister in the front seat, me and brothers in the back seat, my husband behind me in the far back seat. I waited so that we could go to my mother's services. Well, they weren't services, she didn't want that. But Dad thought the kids would want to see my mother before she was cremated. So there we were, the family, in ties, in black dresses, sitting and waiting in our little hearse to drive us to Fuller Funeral Home for our final visit. We were in the car. My husband was in the far back seat, and he knew I was sad. He sensed I was crying while the hearse took us to the funeral parlor. So he reached his hand forward to take my hand, to touch my shoulder, to something. And I couldn't see his face, but his hand was a grave consolation as our hearse rolled on for our chance to say farewell. I was trying not to cry in the ride in the hearse to the funeral parlor. I've been a good Marine. I've been trained to not cry, but I couldn't help the tears at that point. And I did my best to stifle them so no one would consider my sniffling and no one would question my faltering emotions. Once we arrived, I think we were all afraid to go into that room to see her. Well, I can't speak for anyone else. I know I was afraid of what I'd see, afraid of I don't know what, afraid of the finality of it all, just afraid. So I'm the littlest one. Of course, I'll let everyone go before me. They're supposed to want to see her more. That's what I hear. And we walked in, and there were so many seats, and you could see her face, asleep, peeking out of the coffin in the distance. And we all just instinctively sat down. Dad finally walked to her. He knelt before her coffin. We watched him watch her, pray for her, talk to her. I don't know what he was communicating with her. He was with her, and we all wanted that with her one last time. One sister went next, knelt, cried, then a brother, then another brother. And I watched a progression of family members, all older than me, all seemingly more important, all with more history with her than me. And my husband asked if I wanted him to go with me when I walked up to see my mother. And I thought, no, I need to do this on my own. I finally walked up to her, knelt before her, looked at her, and the dress that she wore to my wedding. And I thought she looked so beautiful. She looked so peaceful. She looked like she was sleeping, and I hadn't seen her that peaceful in a long time. Every time I came to visit her since the disease started, she was always looking tired when she was awake. Otherwise, she was asleep and looked fitful in her rest. I looked at her eyebrows. They were penciled in very nicely. And I looked at her nails. They were long and nicely painted. And the earrings we picked for her, they were so dainty and so lovely. And she looked so peaceful. And that's all I could keep thinking, that she looked so well rested, that she was just taking a good nap and that she would be just fine. She had to be. I looked at my mother one last time. These coming thoughts would be my final words to her face. This would be the last time I saw her. Make it good, girl. You're the one with the words. Tell her what you mean in 50 words or less. That's how the services go, right? So I told her that I loved her. And I told her that I only hope I carry on any of her kindness, because that's the way she'll live on. Because the world is filled with so many people who aren't nice, who aren't kind, and losing her makes the world a worse place. People have told me that I'm kind, that I am nice, and I only hope I can do you justice, and I can somehow make this world a better place, like you did. I only hope that I can do the world justice, because the world needs you now, Mom. And you had to leave us. So what do we do now? Before I left her, that first time, I started to run my hands along my chest into a cross, because I wanted all of the spirits to know that you are there and that you are welcomed, because you are blessed. Even if it's only from the likes of me. No more sad stuff. This is a short one called Philosopher, the Blue Note. He seemed so interested in philosophy, which seems strange, sitting in a bar about 1:30 in the morning. It didn't seem the time or place for philosophy. But I asked questions anyway. Do you believe in a God? And if so, do you believe in a mono or polytheistic religion? And he answered by saying that everyone has a God, whether it be their soul or they're an icon that they pray to every night before they go to bed, and that it doesn't matter what form that God takes for a person, because the moral values are similar in most every religion. What matters is that we have a God of one sort or another, that most people don't pay attention to their spirituality, who they are, or what they really want. No, they don't, I thought, and was amazed that this drunk man was able to formulate cohesive thoughts at 2:30 in the morning. But then, of course, he had to mention something about sexuality, and then I realized that this was all just one long, drawn-out come on. And then he asked me for my number, and I gave him a fake one, and then he tried to kiss me, and I pushed him away, and he ended up running out the bar. So much for philosophy, I thought, and I went home once again, alone with my morals or values or whatever on earth you want to call them, wondering if there's anyone out there like me. Oh. My John. Because we talked philosophy half the night in our first date. It was awesome. Anyway, I've only read this poem once before in my life. This appeared in my 2014 collection book called Partial Nudity, and I read it in my show for it. And I'm going to share it with you. And this poem is called, I started writing this poem when it was based on an idea I got from somebody else. Every line afterward is a reference for another poem of mine. Oh, so you might recognize some of them. I'm wondering how many John will recognize. I started writing this poem when the umbilical cord was cut. Even though I should know better, I was never close enough to you. I started writing this poem when I scratched, when I had the chicken pox. I started writing this poem when I took the final swig of vodka and reached for that bottle to pour myself another. I started writing this poem when I found myself trying to make excuses. I started writing this poem when I wiped the makeup off my eyelids and wondered who I was trying to impress. I started writing this poem when I met you, the man who rapes my sisters. You, the man who rapes me. I started writing this poem when I pulled out a fountain pen and wrote till my fountain pen ran dry. I started writing this poem when the Pope gave a thank you to women who work, because we do more than our fair share without equal pay, and we prove ourselves to who over and over again. I started writing this poem when I belched out loud, laughed too hard, swore too much, and grew up too fast. I started writing this poem when I felt that feeling in my chest, right between my lungs, like someone was pushing on the bone there, right there by your heart. I started writing this poem when I looked at the clock. It was 15 minutes before I'd have to take another pill. I started writing this poem when I realized that nothing changes and nothing stays the same. I started writing this poem when you took my thoughts again, shoved them into your mouth again, and spit them back at me again. And you told me what I already know. I started writing this poem when you rolled your sultry, deep voice over me like a wave of heat on a summer afternoon. I started writing this poem when I felt that breeze, hot and sticky, hit me in just the wrong way. I started writing this poem when you needed a leader, so I stepped up to the plate. I started writing this poem when I knew who they were coming for. I started writing this poem when I threw out into the open my screams, my cries for help so much faster than I could before. I started writing this poem when you said, when somebody eats one of you, word gets around. I started writing this poem when I found a method of fighting more direct, slower, more painful, more personal. I started writing this poem when I realized that somebody had to die for these. I started writing this poem when the cuts into my hands dripped blood onto the street. I started writing this poem when I walked down the street in that city again and it looks like a Quentin Tarantino movie where everybody's pointing guns at each other. I started writing this poem when, after years of pointing that 9mm to the line, of knowing the base of the neck was the best place, my only thought was, aim carefully. I started writing this poem when the only choice we had was to destroy ourselves. I started writing this poem when I drizzled cream into my coffee, watching it form a mushroom cloud from within that contained bomb, when you just died. I started writing this poem when you took me into the casket with you and I could feel the coldness of winter all around me and I heard them shoveling the dirt over my head. I started writing this poem when I survived the blizzards, the hurricanes, the tornadoes. I lived through the drought. I survived it all. I even survived a near fatal blow from humanity. I started writing this poem when Dachau's gas chambers worked every morning as snow settled on ashes. I started writing this poem when my mother died. That's when the forest fire started and the whole forest burned down. But I started writing this poem when I had to get closer. Because I started writing this poem when the universe was always expanding. I needed to write to fill the ever-expanding spaces. I started writing this poem when all I could do was turn my fingers black, scouring the newspapers, searching for the right words. I started writing this poem when I wasn't occupying Wall Street. I just wanted to occupy your mind. You see, I started writing this poem when slamming my hands, my fingers against that keyboard, because there were too many atrocities in the world, too many injustices that I had witnessed, too many people who had wronged me, and I had a lot of work to do. I started writing this poem when there was a spirituality behind it. It is something I do because I must, and I could not exist any other way.